Jasmine Crockett was not a woman who backed down from a fight. In fact, she thrived on it. Her reputation as one of the most aggressive and fearless lawyers in the country had been built over years of taking on cases that others deemed impossible to win. She had a knack for walking into courtrooms with an air of confidence that could make even the toughest opponents second-guess themselves. But today, Jasmine wasn't just facing any opponent. She was going head-to-head with Elon Musk. It all started when Jasmine stumbled upon what she believed was the perfect case to cement her legacy. One of Musk's companies had recently announced plans to expand its operations in a small town in Texas. The project involved cutting-edge technology, but it also raised concerns among local residents about potential environmental damage. For Jasmine, this was more than just a legal battle. It was a chance to stand up for ordinary people against someone she saw as untouchable, someone who thought he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. Elon Musk, on the other hand, didn't seem particularly worried. Known for his eccentric personality and bold ideas, Musk had faced lawsuits before. To him, they were just another part of doing business. When Jasmine filed her complaint, accusing his company of violating environmental regulations and exploiting loopholes, he barely blinked. Instead, he quietly assembled a team of top-notch attorneys to defend his interests. Among them were Daniel Brooks, a seasoned litigator with decades of experience, and Emily Shaw, a brilliant strategist known for her ability to anticipate every move an opponent might make. Jasmine, however, wasn't intimidated. She had her own team backing her up, though they weren't nearly as experienced as Musk's crew. Liam Foster, a young associate fresh out of law school, admired Jasmine's passion and drive. Rachel Adams, another member of Jasmine's team, brought a meticulous attention to detail that often caught things others missed. Together they worked tirelessly to build their case, gathering evidence and preparing arguments designed to take Musk down. The first real test came during the pre-trial hearings. Jasmine walked into the courtroom wearing a sleek black suit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She carried herself with purpose, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Musk. He sat at the defendant's table, calm and composed, dressed casually in a dark blazer and jeans. His demeanor irritated Jasmine. How dare he act so relaxed? Didn't he realize the gravity of the situation? When the judge called the session to order, Jasmine wasted no time launching into her opening remarks. She spoke passionately about the impact Musk's project would have on the local community. She painted a vivid picture of polluted rivers, displaced families, and destroyed ecosystems. Her words dripped with emotion, and she could see members of the audience nodding in agreement. This was exactly the reaction she wanted, but then it was Musk's turn to speak. As he rose from his seat, Jasmine felt a flicker of unease. Something about the way he moved, the quiet confidence in his posture, made her nervous. When he began talking, his voice steady and measured, her anxiety grew. Musk didn't rely on theatrics or emotional appeals. Instead, he presented a logical, well-reasoned argument that addressed each of Jasmine's points directly. He cited specific laws and regulations, explaining how his company had followed every rule to the letter. He even went so far as to highlight initiatives his company had undertaken to minimize environmental harm. By the time Musk finished speaking, the mood in the courtroom had shifted. Judge Patricia Monroe, a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, leaned forward slightly, listening intently. Jasmine couldn't help but notice the subtle change in the judge's expression, a mix of curiosity and respect. It was clear that Musk had made an impression. Back at her office later that day, Jasmine replayed the hearing in her mind. She hated to admit it, but Musk had handled himself better than she expected. Still, she refused to let doubt creep in. "He got lucky," she muttered under her breath as she paced back and forth. Liam and Rachel exchanged glances but said nothing. They knew better than to interrupt Jasmine when she was deep in thought. Over the next few days, Jasmine threw herself into preparing for the trial. She pored over documents, studied case law, and rehearsed her arguments until she could recite them in her sleep. She was determined to prove that Musk wasn't the infallible genius everyone seemed to think he was. Yet, despite her efforts, something nagged at her. A tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered that maybe, just maybe, this case wouldn't be as straightforward as she'd hoped. Meanwhile, Musk continued to operate with the same calm efficiency that had characterized his behavior since the beginning. He spent hours reviewing materials with his team, asking probing questions and challenging assumptions. At times, he even joked with Daniel and Emily, lightening the mood with his trademark humor. To anyone watching, it seemed like Musk wasn't just preparing for a trial. He was enjoying the process. As the trial date approached, tensions between the two sides escalated. Jasmine became increasingly focused, almost obsessive in her preparations. She barely slept, subsisting on coffee and adrenaline. Her dedication inspired her team, but it also worried them. Liam, in particular, noticed how much pressure Jasmine was putting on herself. "You're going to burn out if you keep this up," he said one evening as they worked late into the night. "I'll be fine," Jasmine snapped, not looking up from the stack of papers in front of her. "This is too important to mess up." Liam hesitated, then decided against pushing the issue further. He knew better than to argue with Jasmine when she was in this kind of mood. On the morning of the trial, Jasmine arrived at the courthouse early. She stood outside for a moment, taking deep breaths to steady her nerves. Inside, she found Musk already seated, chatting casually with Daniel and Emily. He glanced up as she entered, offering her a polite nod. Jasmine ignored him, choosing instead to focus on her notes. When the judge called the court to order, Jasmine stepped forward to deliver her opening statement. She spoke with conviction, outlining her case in clear, concise terms. She emphasized the importance of holding powerful individuals accountable and appealed to the jury's sense that justice should prevail. Once again, her words resonated with the audience, drawing nods of approval. But as the day wore on, Jasmine began to feel the weight of the challenge ahead. Every time she thought she had cornered Musk with a damning piece of evidence, he countered with a logical explanation or a technical detail that undermined her point. By the end of the first day, she was exhausted but far from defeated. If anything, the resistance she encountered only fueled her determination to win. Little did Jasmine know this trial would teach her lessons far beyond what she had anticipated. For now, though, she remained laser-focused on one goal: proving that even someone as seemingly invincible as Elon Musk could be held accountable. What she didn't realize yet was that accountability wasn't always about winning. It was about understanding. And understanding was something Jasmine still had a lot to learn. The third day of the trial dawned with a tension that hung heavy in the air. Jasmine Crockett arrived at the courthouse early, her mind racing as she went over her revised strategy. She had spent the previous night rethinking her approach, determined to find a way to regain the upper hand against Elon Musk. Her frustration was palpable, but so was her resolve. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about proving that justice mattered even when faced with someone as formidable as Musk. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere felt different. The jury seemed more engaged, leaning forward slightly, in their seats as if sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Judge Patricia Monroe took her place on the bench, her expression neutral but alert. Jasmine glanced at Musk, who sat calmly at his table, reviewing documents with Daniel Brooks and Emily Shaw. His composure irritated her, but she forced herself to focus. Jasmine began the day by presenting new evidence, a series of emails between Musk's company executives discussing cost-cutting measures. She argued that these emails proved the company had knowingly ignored environmental safeguards in favor of saving money. "This isn't speculation," she said firmly, pointing to key phrases highlighted on the screen. "These are their own words. They knew the risks and chose to ignore them." For a moment, it seemed like Jasmine had struck a nerve. The jury exchanged glances, and even Judge Monroe raised an eyebrow. But then Musk stood up, signaling that he intended to address the court himself. He walked to the podium, his movements deliberate and unhurried. When he began speaking, his tone was calm but firm. These emails are being taken out of context, Musk explained. Yes, we discussed costs, every company does. But those discussions were part of a larger conversation about balancing efficiency with safety. We never compromised on our commitment to protecting the environment. He proceeded to walk the jury through the full context of the emails, showing how they fit into broader planning efforts. By the time he finished, the damning nature of Jasmine's evidence had been significantly diluted. Jasmine clenched her fists under the table, trying to hide her growing frustration. How did he always manage to turn things around? She decided to shift gears again, this time calling another witness, an environmental scientist named Dr. Laura Bennett. Dr. Bennett had reviewed Musk's project plans and concluded that they posed significant risks to local ecosystems. Under Jasmine's questioning, Dr. Bennett laid out her findings in clear, scientific terms. She explained how the proposed expansion could disrupt wildlife habitats and lead to long-term ecological damage. Her testimony painted a grim picture, and several members of the jury nodded along, clearly moved by her expertise. But once again, Musk's team was ready. Emily Shaw rose to cross-examine Dr. Bennett, asking pointed questions about the assumptions behind her analysis. With quiet precision, Emily highlighted gaps in Dr. Bennett's research, pointing out areas where her conclusions relied on outdated data or incomplete models. By the end of the cross-examination, Dr. Bennett's credibility had taken a hit, and Jasmine could feel the momentum slipping away. As the morning session ended, Jasmine retreated to a small conference room to regroup. With Liam and Rachel, she slumped into a chair, rubbing her temples. "What am I missing?" she muttered. "Every time I think I've got him cornered, he flips it back on me." Rachel hesitated before responding. "Maybe it's not just about the facts," she suggested gently. "He's connecting with the jury in a way we're not. They respect him because he's honest, even when he admits there are challenges. Maybe we need to do the same." Liam nodded in agreement. "People want solutions, not just problems. If we can show them that we care about fixing things too, maybe they'll see us differently." Jasmine sighed, knowing they were right. But changing tactics mid-trial wasn't easy, especially when her instincts screamed at her to keep pressing harder. Still, she couldn't deny that Musk's approach was working. Reluctantly, she agreed to adjust her strategy for the afternoon session. When the trial resumed, Jasmine adopted a more collaborative tone. Instead of focusing solely on criticizing Musk's actions, she emphasized the importance of finding solutions that benefited everyone. She acknowledged that innovation was vital, but argued that it needed to be balanced with responsibility. "We're not here to stop progress," she told the court. "We're here to ensure it happens in a way that protects people and the planet." Her shift in tone didn't go unnoticed. The jury seemed more receptive, nodding along as she spoke. Even Judge Monroe appeared impressed, jotting down notes during Jasmine's statements. For the first time in days, Jasmine felt a flicker of hope. Musk, however, wasn't caught off guard. When it was his turn to speak, he praised Jasmine for her willingness to engage constructively. "I appreciate Ms. Crockett's focus on collaboration," he said. "That's exactly what we need. Open dialogue and a shared commitment to doing what's right." He then outlined steps his company had already taken to address community concerns, including partnerships with local organizations and investments in renewable energy initiatives. Jasmine listened carefully, her frustration mingling with grudging admiration. Musk wasn't just defending himself, he was building bridges. It was a masterclass in diplomacy, and she couldn't help but wonder if she'd underestimated him from the start. Later that evening, Jasmine found herself unable to sleep. She lay awake in her hotel room, replaying the day's events in her mind. Something about Musk's demeanor, the way he handled criticism, his willingness to admit fault when necessary, stuck with her. Was it possible that he genuinely cared about making a difference? Or was this all part of some calculated performance? The next morning, Liam brought her a cup of coffee as she prepared for the day ahead. "You okay?" he asked cautiously. "I don't know," Jasmine admitted. "This case is complicated. I thought I understood what I was fighting for, but now I'm not so sure. It's okay to question things," Liam replied. That's how you grow. Jasmine nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. As she entered the courtroom, she noticed Musk chatting casually with Emily Shaw. He looked relaxed, almost cheerful. It was infuriating, and yet somehow inspiring. The day's proceedings focused on closing arguments. Jasmine delivered hers, with renewed clarity, emphasizing the need for accountability while acknowledging the value of innovation. She urged the jury to consider the long-term implications of their decision, reminding them that the choices made today would shape the world of tomorrow. When it was Musk's turn, he spoke with characteristic confidence, tying together threads from earlier testimony to present a cohesive vision of the future. He thanked the jury for their time and attention, expressing gratitude for the opportunity to share his perspective. His closing remarks were polished and persuasive, leaving little doubt about his sincerity. As the trial drew to a close, Jasmine realized something profound. This wasn't just a battle of wits or egos, it was a lesson in humility. No matter the outcome, she knew she had learned something invaluable, that true strength lies not in domination, but in understanding. And perhaps, just perhaps, Elon Musk wasn't the villain she had imagined him to be. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the second day of the trial began. Jasmine Crockett sat at her table, flipping through her notes one last time before the judge entered. She had spent most of the previous night refining her arguments and preparing for every possible counterpoint Musk might throw her way. Sleep had been fleeting, but she didn't care. Winning this case was all that mattered. Elon Musk, on the other hand, seemed as relaxed as ever. He chatted quietly with his team, occasionally glancing toward Jasmine's side of the room. There was no trace of arrogance in his demeanor, just quiet confidence. It was unnerving, to say the least. Liam Foster leaned over to whisper something to Jasmine, but she waved him off. She needed to stay focused. When Judge Patricia Monroe called the session to order, Jasmine stood up immediately. She knew today would be crucial. The jury was watching closely, and she couldn't afford any missteps. Her first task was to present evidence showing how Musk's company had allegedly violated environmental regulations. She called her first witness, a local resident named Karen Miller, who lived near the proposed expansion site. Karen took the stand, visibly nervous but determined to share her story. Under Jasmine's gentle questioning, she described how the area had changed since Musk's company arrived. There used to be trees everywhere, Karen said, her voice trembling slightly. Now it feels like they're tearing everything apart. We're worried about our water supply, our health, everything. Jasmine nodded sympathetically, letting Karen's words hang in the air for a moment before turning back to the jury. This is just one example of what's happening to the community, she said firmly. Mr. Musk may have big ideas, but those ideas come at a cost, one that ordinary people shouldn't have to pay. Musk watched silently from his seat, his expression unreadable. When it was his turn to cross-examine Karen, he didn't get up. Instead, he gestured for Daniel Brooks to take the lead. Daniel approached the witness stand with a polite smile, asking Karen a series of questions designed to clarify her statements. By the time he finished, Karen's testimony felt less damning than Jasmine had hoped. The jury seemed unconvinced. Frustrated, but undeterred, Jasmine moved on to her next piece of evidence: internal documents obtained from Musk's company. These documents allegedly showed discrepancies in how the project's environmental impact had been assessed. As she displayed them on a large screen for everyone to see, she explained their significance in detail. These numbers don't add up, she argued passionately. They've manipulated data to make it look like their project is safer than it really is. Again, Musk remained calm. When it was his team's turn to respond, Emily Shaw rose to address the court. She walked the jury through each document, pointing out where Jasmine's interpretation was flawed. With precision and clarity, Emily demonstrated that the discrepancies Jasmine highlighted were actually standard accounting adjustments, not evidence of wrongdoing. By lunchtime, Jasmine was starting to feel the strain. Every accusation she made seemed to bounce off Musk's defense like water off a duck's back. She tried to shake it off during the break, pacing outside the courthouse while munching on a sandwich. Liam followed her, offering words of encouragement. "You're doing great," he said earnestly. "Just keep pushing." "I'm not sure great is the right word," Jasmine replied, her tone sharp. "We need more than good intentions to win this thing." After lunch, the trial resumed and Jasmine decided to change tactics. Instead of focusing solely on technical details, she shifted to a broader narrative about corporate responsibility. She argued that Musk's actions weren't just harmful, they represented a pattern of behavior that prioritized profit over people. "This isn't just about one project," she declared. "It's about holding powerful individuals accountable when they abuse their influence." Her words resonated with some members of the audience, but others looked skeptical. Musk, sensing an opportunity, leaned forward in his chair. When it was his turn to speak, he surprised everyone by standing up himself, rather than letting his lawyers handle it. The room fell silent as he approached the podium. "Ms. Crockett has raised important points," Musk began, his voice steady and measured. "But I'd like to offer a different perspective." He went on to explain the long-term goals of his project, emphasizing its potential to create jobs, reduce carbon emissions, and improve quality of life for future generations. He admitted there were challenges, but insisted his team was committed to addressing them responsibly. What struck Jasmine and many others in the courtroom was how genuine Musk sounded. He wasn't dodging questions or making excuses. He was owning the situation, presenting himself as someone willing to listen and adapt. It was disarming, to say the least. As the afternoon wore on, Jasmine grew increasingly frustrated. No matter what she threw at Musk, he countered with logic, facts, and a surprising amount of humility. Even Judge Monroe appeared impressed, nodding along as Musk spoke. For the first time, Jasmine started to doubt whether she could win this case. Back at her office later that evening, Jasmine replayed the day's events in her mind. She paced back and forth, muttering under her breath. "How does he do it?" she asked aloud. "It's like he's always 10 steps ahead." Rachel Adams, who had been quietly organizing files, looked up. "Maybe he is," she suggested cautiously. "He's not just relying on his lawyers, he's involved in every detail. You heard him in court today, he knows this stuff inside and out." Jasmine stopped pacing and stared at Rachel. "So what are you saying? That we're outmatched?" "No," Rachel replied quickly. "I'm saying we need to rethink our strategy. Maybe instead of trying to tear him down, we should focus on finding common ground. Show the jury that we're reasonable too." Jasmine frowned, considering Rachel's suggestion. It went against her instincts. She was used to bulldozing her way to victory, but maybe there was merit in taking a different approach. Still, the thought of backing down even slightly irritated her. "Fine," she said finally. "We'll adjust tomorrow, but we're not giving up." While Jasmine wrestled with her thoughts, Musk returned to his hotel suite to debrief with his team. They gathered around a table littered with papers and laptops, discussing the day's developments. Emily Shaw summarized the key moments, highlighting areas where Jasmine had struggled. "She's tough," Emily admitted. "But she's predictable. If we keep staying one step ahead, we'll be fine." Musk nodded thoughtfully. "Good work today," he said, smiling at his team. "Let's keep it up, and remember, we're not just defending ourselves here. We're proving that innovation can coexist with responsibility." The next morning, Jasmine arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. She had spent hours revising her strategy, determined to regain control of the narrative. When the trial resumed, she adopted a softer tone, focusing less on attacking Musk personally and more on advocating for transparency and accountability. It was a subtle shift, but it seemed to resonate with the jury. Musk noticed the change and adapted accordingly. During his own statements, he acknowledged Jasmine's concerns, agreeing that open communication was essential. "We welcome scrutiny," he told the court, "because we believe in what we're doing. And if there are ways we can improve, we want to hear about them." The dynamic between the two sides began to shift. What had started as a fierce battle of wills now felt more like a conversation. A tense, high-stakes conversation, but a conversation nonetheless. For Jasmine, It was both frustrating and enlightening. She still wanted to win, but she couldn't deny that Musk's perspective had merit. As the day drew to a close, Jasmine found herself reflecting on the complexity of the situation. This wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about understanding the bigger picture. And for the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had underestimated Elon Musk, not just as a legal opponent, but as a person. The days following the trial verdict were a blur for Jasmine Crockett. She had expected to feel devastated, but instead she found herself in a strange state of reflection. The courtroom battle with Elon Musk had been one of the toughest challenges of her career, and though she hadn't won, it felt like she had gained something far more valuable: perspective. Jasmine spent hours replaying the trial in her mind, analyzing every moment, every argument, and every decision she had made. At first, she focused on what she could have done differently, how she might have countered Musk's arguments more effectively or presented her case in a way that swayed the jury. But as time passed, her thoughts shifted. She began to realize that this trial wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about understanding the complexities of the world and recognizing that sometimes the lines between right and wrong weren't as clear-cut as they seemed. Liam Foster noticed the change in Jasmine almost immediately. "You've been quiet," he remarked one afternoon as they worked in her office. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Jasmine replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I've just been thinking about everything." "About the trial?" Liam asked gently. "Yeah," Jasmine admitted. "But not just the trial. About what it means to fight for something, to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. I thought I knew exactly what that meant, but now I'm not so sure." Liam nodded, sensing that Jasmine needed space to process her thoughts. He didn't press her further, instead focusing on organizing files and preparing for their next case. Rachel Adams, however, couldn't resist offering her own perspective. "You know," Rachel said later that day, "sometimes losing teaches us more than winning ever could. This trial showed you that even someone like Elon Musk isn't just a caricature. He's human with flaws and strengths like anyone else. That's powerful." Jasmine looked at Rachel, surprised by how accurately she had captured her feelings. "Maybe you're right," Jasmine said softly. "I went into this thinking I was fighting against a villain, but now I see that it's not that simple." Across town, Elon Musk was reflecting on the trial as well. Though he had emerged victorious, he didn't feel the usual sense of triumph that came with winning a legal battle. Instead, he found himself thinking about Jasmine, her passion, her determination, and her unwavering belief in justice. He admired those qualities, even if they had been directed against him. During a meeting with Daniel Brooks and Emily Shaw, Musk brought up the topic. "Jasmine's good," he said suddenly, catching his team off guard. "Really good. She fought hard, and she made us better because of it." Emily raised an eyebrow. "You sound like you're considering hiring her." Musk chuckled. "Not a bad idea, actually. Imagine having someone like her on our side, someone who pushes us to be accountable, to think critically about what we're doing. She'd keep us honest." Daniel frowned slightly. "Do you really think she'd agree to work with us, after everything that happened in court?" "It's worth asking," Musk replied with a shrug. "Sometimes the best partnerships come from unexpected places." A few days later, Musk reached out to Jasmine. He sent her a brief email thanking her for the challenge she had posed during the trial and inviting her to meet for coffee. Jasmine hesitated when she read the message. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to put the trial behind her and move on. But another part was curious. What did Musk want, and why did his invitation feel so genuine? Ultimately, curiosity won out. Jasmine agreed to meet him at a small cafe near downtown. When she arrived, Musk was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He stood up as she approached, offering a polite smile. "Thanks for coming," he said, gesturing for her to sit down. "No problem," Jasmine replied, taking a seat. She glanced at the coffee cups. "You guessed my order?" "I took a chance," Musk admitted with a grin. If I got it wrong, I figured we could share. Jasmine couldn't help but laugh. You're lucky I like black coffee. They spent the next hour talking, not about the trial, but about broader issues like innovation, responsibility, and the future of technology. Musk shared his vision for creating sustainable solutions that benefited society as a whole, while Jasmine spoke about her desire to hold powerful individuals accountable without stifling progress. To her surprise, they found common ground in their goals, even if their methods differed. By the end of the conversation, Musk decided to take a chance. Here's the thing, he said, leaning forward slightly. I respect your drive and your commitment to ethics. I think you'd be a great asset to my team. Not as a lawyer, necessarily, but as someone who can help us navigate the gray areas. Someone who can ensure we're doing the right thing even when it's hard. Jasmine stared at him, stunned. You're serious? Absolutely, Musk replied. Think about it. You'd have a seat at the table influencing decisions that affect millions of people. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Jasmine didn't answer right away. She had spent years building her reputation as a fighter for justice, often positioning herself as an outsider challenging the system. The idea of joining forces with someone she had once seen as an adversary felt foreign, and yet undeniably intriguing. Over the next few days, Jasmine wrestled with the decision. She discussed it with Liam and Rachel, both of whom encouraged her to consider the opportunity. This could be your chance to make a real difference, Liam said. Instead of fighting from the outside, you'd be shaping things from within, Rachel added. And let's face it, you'd be holding him accountable in a way no one else could. Eventually, Jasmine made up her mind. She accepted Musk's offer, agreeing to join his team as a senior advisor focused on ethics and accountability. It wasn't a role she had envisioned for herself, but it felt like the right step, a way to channel her passion into meaningful action. On her first day in the new position, Jasmine walked into Musk's headquarters feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. The building buzzed with energy, filled with people working on projects that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Musk greeted her warmly, introducing her to key members of his team and outlining her responsibilities. This is your domain, he told her. If something doesn't feel right, speak up. If there's a better way to do things, suggest it. Your voice matters here. Jasmine nodded, grateful for the trust he was placing in her. As she settled into her role, she realized that this was more than just a job. It was an opportunity to bridge the gap between innovation and responsibility. She still believed in holding powerful individuals accountable, but now she understood that accountability didn't have to mean opposition. Sometimes, it meant collaboration. In the months that followed, Jasmine became an integral part of Musk's team. She challenged assumptions, raised tough questions, and ensured that ethical considerations remained at the forefront of every decision. Her presence forced the company to think critically about its impact on society, leading to changes that benefited both the business and the communities it served. For Musk, having Jasmine on board was a reminder of the importance of humility and self-reflection. Her insights pushed him to grow, to adapt, and to strive for excellence in ways he hadn't considered before. Together, they formed an unlikely partnership, one built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to making the world a better place. As time passed, Jasmine reflected on how far she had come since the trial. She had entered the courtroom determined to prove a point, only to discover that the real lesson lay in understanding. Understanding others, understanding herself, and understanding the power of collaboration. In the end, the trial hadn't just changed her career, it had changed her life. And perhaps, Jasmine thought with a smile, that was the greatest victory of all. The fourth day of the trial began with a sense of anticipation that filled the courtroom. The air felt heavier, as if everyone, from the jury to the spectators, knew they were approaching the climax of the case. Jasmine Crockett arrived early, her mind buzzing with thoughts about how to navigate the final stages of the trial. She had spent the previous night reflecting on the events so far, and though she still wanted to win, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case was teaching her more than she had expected. Elon Musk, as always, seemed unfazed. He sat at the defendant's table, flipping through a folder of notes while exchanging occasional remarks with Daniel Brooks and Emily Shaw. His calm demeanor irritated Jasmine, but it also intrigued her. How did he stay so composed under pressure? Was it confidence in his position, or was it something deeper, a genuine belief in what he was doing? As the session began, Judge Patricia Monroe reminded both sides that they were entering the final stretch. "We'll hear closing arguments today," she said firmly, addressing the room. "Make them count." Jasmine stood up first, taking a deep breath before turning to face the jury. She decided to focus her closing argument on the human element of the case, the impact Musk's project would have on ordinary people. "This isn't just about numbers or regulations," she began, her voice steady and sincere. "It's about families who live near the site. It's about children who deserve clean air and safe water. It's about communities that fear losing everything they hold dear." She spoke passionately, weaving together stories from witnesses like Karen Miller and Dr. Laura Bennett. She painted a vivid picture of the risks posed by Musk's expansion plans, emphasizing the potential for long-term harm. Her words carried emotion, and several jurors nodded along, clearly moved. But Jasmine didn't stop there. Drawing on Liam and Rachel's advice, she shifted gears midway through her argument, acknowledging the importance of innovation and progress. "I'm not here to say we should stop moving forward," she continued. "Innovation is vital. It drives us toward a better future, but it must be done responsibly. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to ensure that progress doesn't come at the expense of safety and sustainability." Her tone softened as she concluded, appealing directly to the jury's sense of fairness. "Your decision will set a precedent," she said. "It will show whether we value profit over people, or whether we believe in holding powerful individuals accountable when they fall short. I trust you to make the right choice." When Jasmine finished speaking, the courtroom fell silent for a moment. Even Judge Monroe paused before nodding slightly, signaling that it was time for Musk to present his closing argument. Musk rose from his seat, walking slowly to the podium. Unlike Jasmine, who had relied on emotion and storytelling, Musk chose a different approach, one rooted in logic and vision. He began by thanking the jury for their attention and patience throughout the trial. Then, in his characteristic measured tone, he outlined the broader purpose of his project. "This initiative isn't just about building something new," Musk explained. "It's about solving problems that affect all of us: climate change, energy shortages, economic inequality. Yes, there are challenges, but those challenges are opportunities to innovate and improve. My team and I are committed to addressing concerns responsibly because we believe in creating a better world." He went on to address specific criticisms raised by Jasmine, explaining how his company had already implemented safeguards to mitigate environmental risks. He cited examples of similar projects that had succeeded in balancing innovation with responsibility, pointing out that progress often required taking calculated risks. "Every great leap forward comes with uncertainty," he said, "but standing still isn't an option, not when the stakes are this high." Musk's closing argument wasn't flashy or dramatic, but it was compelling. He spoke with conviction, painting a picture of a future where technology and humanity coexisted harmoniously. By the time he finished, many in the courtroom, including some members of the jury, were visibly impressed. After both sides had presented their final arguments, Judge Monroe instructed the jury to deliberate. As they filed out of the room, Jasmine sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. The weight of the past few days hit her all at once, and she realized how much this case had tested her professionally and personally. Back at her office later that afternoon, Jasmine tried to distract herself by reviewing documents and organizing files. But her mind kept drifting back to the trial. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't deny that Musk had handled himself admirably. He hadn't dodged questions or resorted to cheap tactics. He had faced every challenge head-on, using facts and reason to defend his position. It was frustrating, yes, but also inspiring. Rachel noticed Jasmine's pensive expression and offered a reassuring smile. "You did everything you could," she said softly. "No matter what happens, you should be proud." I know, Jasmine replied, though her voice lacked conviction. But sometimes I wonder, am I fighting for the right reasons? Or am I just trying to prove I can win? Rachel hesitated before responding. Maybe it's both, she suggested. And maybe that's okay. Growth comes from questioning yourself even when you're in the middle of a fight. Jasmine nodded, appreciating Rachel's wisdom. Still, she couldn't shake the nagging doubt that perhaps she had misjudged Musk from the start. Was he really the cold, calculating corporate titan she had assumed him to be? Or was he someone who genuinely believed in making a difference, even if his methods weren't perfect? Meanwhile, across town, Musk met with his legal team to debrief. They gathered around a table littered with papers and laptops, discussing the trial's key moments. Emily Shaw summarized Jasmine's closing argument, highlighting areas where she had effectively appealed to the jury's emotions. She's good, Emily admitted. But I think we made our case too. Musk nodded thoughtfully. She's relentless and smart. That's why I respect her. He paused, glancing at Daniel Brooks. If we win, it won't be because she didn't try her hardest, and honestly, I wouldn't expect anything less. The comment surprised Daniel, who raised an eyebrow. You almost sound like you admire her. I do, Musk replied with a faint smile. Passion like hers is rare. If she channels it the right way, she could accomplish incredible things. As the evening wore on, Jasmine found herself unable to focus on work. She wandered outside, breathing in the cool night air as she reflected on the trial. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that winning wasn't the only measure of success. Perhaps the real victory lay in learning about herself, about Musk, and about the complexities of the world they lived in. The next morning, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Judge Monroe called the session to order. Jasmine sat upright, her heart pounding as she waited for the foreman to speak. We find in favor of the defendant, the foreman announced, his voice clear and steady. A wave of disappointment washed over Jasmine, but she forced herself to remain composed. Across the room, Musk exchanged quiet smiles with his team, though he avoided looking triumphant. Instead, he turned to Jasmine and offered a respectful nod. After the judge dismissed the court, Jasmine packed up her belongings, feeling a mix of emotions. She was frustrated, yes, but also oddly relieved. As she walked out of the courtroom, Musk approached her. You fought hard, he said simply. I respect that. Jasmine looked at him, surprised by his sincerity. Thanks, she replied after a moment. I guess I underestimated you. Musk chuckled softly. We all underestimate each other sometimes. That's how we grow. Before Jasmine could respond, he extended his hand. After a brief hesitation, she shook it, feeling a strange sense of closure. The trial may have ended, but its lessons would stay with her for a long time.